answer to where are the boys is they're dead and they're murdered.
The reality here, man, is 2 little boys went missing. It didn't do enough to show that no one took them. It was wander off or dead.
There are glaring issues in this case that cannot be excused.
It's time for justice.
Where are the boys? It is a question that has haunted Kern County since December 21st, 2020, when 2 young brothers were reported missing out of California City. Thanks for joining us here on 17 News at noon. I'm Elena Rusk.
And I'm Maddie Jansen. After just 2 days of deliberation, a verdict has been reached in one of the most closely watched trials in Kern County history. Trezell and Jacqueline West have been found guilty on 1 count of second-degree murder for the death of Orrin West. But the jury was deadlocked on the 2nd count of second-degree murder related to the death of the other child, Orson. And so the judge declared a mistrial on 2 charges.
Now we have 17 News team coverage today. Our Alex Fisher taking a deep dive through this case starting from day 1. He'll have a full recap on the year-long investigation coming up. And 17's Marco Torres will have more on the boys' journey through foster care, which ultimately landed Orrin and Orson in the custody of the Wests.
But we begin our coverage with a breakdown of the verdict. Trezell and Jacqueline West faced a slew of charges, among them second-degree murder, willful cruelty to a child, involuntary manslaughter, conspiring to commit murder, and falsely reporting an emergency. Counts 1 through 3 apply to Orrin West, who allegedly died in Bakersfield before the Wests ever moved to California City. Counts 4 through 6 apply to Orson, who prosecutors argue was killed after Orrin died. On the first count of second-degree murder, the jury found Trezell and Jacqueline West guilty. The jury also turned in a guilty verdict on count 2, involuntary manslaughter of Orrin West. On the 3rd count of willful cruelty to a child, the jury found Trezell and Jacqueline West guilty. But here's where the jury couldn't reach an agreement on 2 of the charges related to Orson. That mistrial was declared for count 4, conspiring to commit a murder, as well as count 5, second-degree murder. Prosecutors argued he was killed shortly after Orrin died. For count 6 of willful cruelty of a child related to Orson, the jury found Trezell and Jacqueline West guilty. And finally, count 7, false report of an emergency. The jury turning in a verdict of guilty. Trezell and Jacqueline West will be sentenced on July 13th.
Now, even 2 years after intense public scrutiny, we know very little about Trezell and Jacqueline West. Public records tell us Trezell Philip West is 36 years old. Jacqueline Gabrielle Vasquez West is 33. Prior to December 2020, they had no local arrest records. In the months after the boys were reported missing, there were dozens of searches and scores of prayer vigils for Orrin and Orson, but the Wests never went to those. There was even 3 social media posts by the extended West family praying for the boys' return, but none by Trezell and Jacqueline. A yearbook confirms Trezell was a 2004 graduate of Bakersfield High School. Immediately after Orrin and Orson went missing in 2020, authorities seized the other 4 boys who were living with Wests.
Before the conviction, Trezell and Jacqueline West were indicted by the Kern County grand jury. Little's known about those proceedings, but that's intentional. The Kern County grand jury is made up of 19 volunteers from the community. It's rarely used. Most of the time, prosecutors file charges directly, leading to a public preliminary hearing. But when they happen, a grand jury's proceedings are private. Witnesses can testify without fear of retaliation, and prosecutors can avoid tipping a defendant ready to flee the county. And ultimately, members of a grand jury have the power to bring an indictment. Defense attorneys are not present at grand jury proceedings. Their only information comes from the prosecution. That fact has led some to question the fairness of the process. The murder conviction came in the 2nd degree. According to California law, a second-degree murder charge alleges a killing that is intentional but not premeditated, or a killing caused by reckless disregard for human life. The act typically doesn't have any kind of premeditation and may only have been intended to cause harm rather than death. It's punishable by a prison term of 15 years to life. First-degree murder, on the other hand, is defined as the unlawful killing of a human being or a fetus with malice aforethought.
Now, this verdict is just another chapter in the long and sad story of these missing boys. 17's Alex Fisher joins us with more on how we got to this point.
They are our children, and so we want them back.
A desperate plea just 4 days before Christmas. Trezell and Jacqueline West report 2 of their kids are missing. It's December 21st, 2020. The West claim 3-year-old Orson and 4-year-old Oren had gone missing from the backyard of their home on the edge of the vast desert community of California City.
I came in the house, I saw them there. I went in the house, I came back out, I didn't see them there. I realized that I left the gate open and I panicked.
The couple called police later that night. Officers and neighbors rushed to the house and started looking for the boys, scouring yards and fields.
And that's all I want is to find a baby. You understand? And I hit a bunch of corners. I went down this street, I turned my light on, I searched, I called their names.
The next day, the search turned into an investigation.
Please further search warrant!
Investigators went through the West home, taking large brown bags full of evidence. The family's van was towed. Their cell phones were seized. Police said the Wests were cooperating with the investigation, but authorities removed the family's 4 other sons to protective custody. The community prayed. They left presents. Family, friends, and strangers all clinging to hope.
We're looking for something to do. Look, some way that we could step up and do something with the community. And right now, the only thing that we can do is give gifts because they weren't able to get gifts on Christmas.
Police continued their search. They dug up vacant fields. They used ground-penetrating radar to search for bodies, but nothing.
What I do truly believe is that night, there is no way that they could have got out of that the neighborhood without some sort of assistance from an adult.
Police wouldn't say who that adult might have been, but a week later, the exhausted chief was more blunt.
I can't comment on that, whether I think they're alive or not. I do suspect foul play. We haven't been able to put together, how the boys got out of the yard or where they've gone.
4 months later, the Bakersfield Police Department took over the case. BPD said they had more resources than the 21-officer California City Police Department. After BPD got the case, investigators followed up on leads, some of them leading to massive searches.
I expect that there will be more searches. There's been numerous interviews, numerous search warrants, and that will continue until we know what happened.
Nothing was turning up. The community was getting worried, but still remained hopeful.
These boys will be found. They will be brought home.
Community contributions poured in to create a reward of more than $100,000. Prayer vigils were held. People gathered to ask God to return the boys safely. Trezell and Jacqueline never attended any. Then, a year later, a stunning development.
The investigation has revealed that Oren and Orson West are deceased. The investigation has also revealed that they died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing.
Trezell and Jacqueline West were indicted by the grand jury on charges they murdered the boys. Hours before his arrest, 17 News tracked down Trezell West at a post office in Edison. He took off in an RV west of Bakersfield, and that's when police caught up to him and made the arrest. For 14 months, people asked, "Where are the boys?" Now, they were asking something different.
The question is now, where are the boys' bodies? We want to be able to bring them home and, give them a proper burial.
Trezell and Jacqueline West pleaded not guilty.
It feels good, though, to see them sitting there handcuffed in those brown suits or whatever. That's where they belong.
The trial went on for more than a month. Witnesses said they hadn't seen the boys for months prior to them being reported missing.
Ultimately, the answer to the question of where are the boys will be answered. It's that they're dead. And at the end of the case, I will ask you to return a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as to Trezell and Jacqueline for the murders of Oren and Orson West.
But the pivotal testimony came from the West's eldest biological child, who claimed he saw 4-year-old Oren's body at the family's home.
They let him die.
The defense argued that police focused on the West from the very beginning, ignoring other possible suspects.
This was a tragic accident, is what the evidence will show. All right? They don't have an answer for it because it was tragic. But instead, Trezell is here on a murder charge.
We are saying that honestly, anything could have happened, right? They were abducted. We don't know. And to be quite honest, if we knew the answers to that, we really wouldn't even be here.
The question remains the same. Where are the boys?
That was 17's Alex Fisher reporting. Without a body, proving that someone has committed murder is difficult, but it's not impossible. The last no-body murder conviction here in Kern County was the case of Daniel Rhodes. Last year, the Caliente man was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison for gunning down William Alford in 2019. Rhodes admitted he shot Alford after Alford forced his way into his home and threatened him. Rhodes told investigators he loaded Alford's body into his pickup and tossed it inside a large trash bin off Caliente Bodfish Road. Alford's body has never been found. Test results revealed a bullet fragment found at the scene of the shooting had DNA on it consistent with Alford's DNA profile.
Now, when Orrin and Orson were reported missing in 2020, concerned citizens and businesses pledged various rewards that totaled well over $125,000. But it was an unorganized grassroots effort, and there's no evidence that anyone ever collected any money. There were never any consistent conditions on what was required to earn the rewards. At one point, the California City Police Department even offered $25,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Cal City Police Chief Jesse Hightower confirming to 17 News no one ever came forward to claim the award money. And public interest in this trial forced the Kern County Superior Court to accommodate a fervent online audience, and with it, issues of sidestepping court media guidelines. The trial began on March 28th. Those who couldn't make it inside the courtroom could listen in through an audio stream provided by the court. Public Affairs Officer Kristen Davis told KGT that hundreds of people logged in to listen to the proceedings. The number grew over the first 3 days of the trial, reaching nearly 1,800 listeners by March 30th. With this case being highly sensitive, the judge implemented restrictions for what was allowed to be recorded, but some people didn't play by the rules. The court says there were several people illegally streaming the proceedings on other platforms.
The story of the West Boys
All right, well, the story of the West Boys going through foster care and then later on to adoption had many twists and turns. Here's 17's Marco Torres.
Orrin and Orson West, as we know them today, weren't born with those names. Their birth names were Sincere with a C and Classic Pettis. Sincere was born on August 4th, 2016, and Classic was born June 11th, 2017. The boys were born 10 months apart to Ryan Dean and Charles Pettis. When Sincere was 3 months old, according to court documents, he was taken to Memorial Hospital for crying uncontrollably. It was discovered his leg was broken.
I was at work. I noticed my baby cry wasn't normal when I got home, and I took him straight to the hospital, and they say he had a femur bone. His femur bone was broken into twisted for it.
Kern County Human Services suspected abuse and placed him in emergency foster care. A month later, he was placed in an established Bakersfield foster home operated by a woman named LaToya Spry. Dean, his biological mother, visited him multiple times a week as she fought to get him back, according to court documents. 6 months later, Dean gave birth to her second child. She named him Classic. Classic went home with Dean, but 11 days later, he was removed from the home based on suspicions about what happened to his brother. He was reunited with his brother in Spry's foster home. During the murder trial, Spry testified the boys were removed from her home in 2018 after her daughter went to school with a scrape on her leg. Abuse was feared. There never were criminal charges against Spry, but the boys, then about 1 and 2 years old, were removed from her home and placed with Trezell and Jacqueline West.
They got taken from an abusive home and put into an abusive home.
The Wests renamed Sincere Orrin West, and they renamed Classic Orson West. In 2019, the boys were formally adopted by the West family. The next year, in December of 2020, both Orrin and Orson were reported missing by Trezell and Jacqueline West. They were 3 and 4 years old. Marco Torres, 17 News.
17 News has followed this case since the very beginning. For complete coverage, just head to our website, kget.com.